Ever put your all into a project? Check things off the list, only to feel like it didn't really make the difference you'd hoped for.
It's like you reached the finish line, but did you actually get to where you wanted to go?
It's like that feeling when you finally clean out your garage, but then a week later, it's a disaster again.
Exactly. And that's what we're tackling in this deep dive benefit realization. We're digging into PX02 Evaluate and Deliver project benefits and value. And it's all about making sure those wins aren't just temporary.
So not just for, massive corporate projects, then?
No, not at all. This applies to anything from launching a website to, well, you mentioned the garage, right?
And the source material breaks it down into 5 key actions. Imagine, building a house.
I like that. Those actions are the pillars, the foundation for making sure your project actually delivers.
Okay, so first things first. Before you even start laying bricks, you got to be sure about the blueprint.
You need to know what you're building and why, and that's where we start identifying those all-important project benefits.
So not just the obvious stuff, right? Like if we're talking about a website, it's more than just get more clicks.
Right, because what does get more clicks even mean? We need to dig deeper. Think about an e-commerce business. Their redesign, they want a sales boost, sure.
But there's got to be more to it than that.
Exactly. What about a better experience for customers or strengthening the brand itself? Those are benefits too.
Okay, so we're talking about the stuff that's harder to put, a number on.
It can be trickier to measure, yeah, but it's still essential to the project's success. Everyone involved needs to be on board with those goals from the start.
Otherwise, you risk building something that only ticks off half the boxes on the list, right?
And leave some people feeling like their needs weren't met. That's where this idea of a benefits breakdown structure comes in handy.
Benefits breakdown structure. Sounds kind of jargony, but go on.
Think of it as, a treasure map, but instead of X marks the spot, it maps out all the benefits, big and small, your project could uncover.
Instead of just, we want a better website, you're listing out those specific benefits, like a to-do list for success.
In the source material, it gives you a way to categorize them, to actually see how they all connect. But identifying those benefits, it's just the first step.
Because what happens once the project's in motion? Who's making sure those benefits are actually, coming to life?
And that's where our next pillar comes into play. We have to figure out who's responsible, who's owning those benefits, even after the initial launch.
So going back to our e-commerce example, if a benefit is make the website faster, we need someone who owns that, right?
Precisely. Someone who's tracking how fast those pages load, making sure things are running smoothly. It's all about accountability.
Otherwise, it's like we planted the seeds, but then we forgot to water the garden.
Exactly. And things fall apart. And speaking of keeping things on track, that takes us to our third pillar. We can't just hope these benefits magically appear. We need a way to actually track them, to measure if they're working.
It's like, okay, we'll track how many people visit the website. But is that really telling the whole story?
Not quite. That's where we get into, those KPIs everyone's always talking about.
Key performance indicators, those things that tell us if we're actually moving the needle.
Exactly. And this is where a lot of projects, they kind of miss the mark. They focus on numbers that look impressive, but don't actually reflect the goals.
So for our e-commerce buddies, instead of just total website visits, we'd want to look at, say, how many people actually bought something.
Yes. Or how much money they spent on average. Metrics that really show if the new website is actually boosting sales.
So those KPIs, they're like the measuring sticks for each benefit we identified earlier.
And remember those harder to measure benefits we talked about, like improving how people see the brand. Those need KPIs too. It's just about finding the right ones.
So maybe the e-commerce team tracks, I don't know, how many positive reviews they're getting or what people are saying on social media.
Now you're getting it. It's all about getting creative and finding those metrics that really paint a picture of what's happening. Okay, ready for the next pillar. This one, it's all about challenging assumptions.
Wait, we're questioning the whole approach now, like how the project is actually done.
Sometimes a fresh perspective helps. Let's stick with our e-commerce example. They could go with an agile method, right? Developing in stages, getting feedback as they go.
Or they could do the more traditional way, waterfall, where everything happens in order, and the new website, it's like a big reveal at the end.
Each has its pros and cons, of course. Agile, it's flexible, you see results faster. Waterfall, it's predictable, more controlled.
So how do you decide which way to go?
It's about weighing those options against the project's needs, its limitations. And this is important considering what the stakeholders prefer.
Some folks might be all about that agile life, while others, they need to see the whole plan laid out in front of them.
Exactly. There's no one right answer. It's about finding the best fit for the project, for the people involved.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. It's more than just, like, checking boxes. It's about making smart choices every step of the way. But even with the best plan, sometimes things go sideways. How do we keep everyone in the loop, make sure they're not freaking out? That's where the last pillar comes in, right?
Communication is key. It's a team effort. We can't just go silent when things get tough.
So if our e-commerce team hits a snag, like a feature that's going to take way longer than expected.
Don't hide it. Being open about those challenges, it builds trust and it allows for adjustments.
And just as important as sharing the not-so-good news is celebrating those early wins, right?
Exactly. Maybe the new checkout process means fewer people are abandoning their carts. Shout about it. Visuals help too, those charts and graphs that show how things are moving.
Okay, I'm sold on communication. But let's say our e-commerce website, it's finally live, confetti everywhere, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
We're not just done, are we?
Not quite. Think of it as the after party, the post-project review. We look at the results, see how those KPIs measured up, figure out what we learned.
Like taking one last victory lap, but instead of champagne, we're popping data.
It's about recognizing that, reaching those benefits, it's not a one and done deal. It's a process, an ongoing thing.
And even though we've been talking about this e-commerce website, these principles, they could apply to anything, right?
Absolutely. Big projects, small projects, doesn't matter if you're a giant company or just trying to, revamp your morning routine.
It's about shifting that mindset, not just finishing the tasks, but actually creating change that sticks.
I think that's a great takeaway. It's about making a real impact.
This deep dive into, what was it again? Benefit realization. It's been really eye-opening. I hope everyone listening got as much out of it as I did.
I do have one last thought, if I can sneak it in.
Of course, please do.
As you jump into those projects, those big goals, remember, success, it's not just a finish line. It's more like maybe a winding road.
Okay, I like that.
There'll be detours, you'll need to adjust, reevaluate. The learning never really stops.
Wise words. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive. Until next time, keep those project gardens growing, everyone.